Welcome. If you're lying in bed right now, eyes heavy, mind still racing, you're in the right place. Let's go way, way back. Before cities. Before kingdoms. Before anyone invented a word for bed. Back when humans were just people. People with sticks. And rocks. And the constant worry of getting eaten. So how did they sleep? Well, first off, there was no bedtime. No clock. No bedtime stories. Just the sun going down and the cold creeping in. And caves. If you were lucky, you had a cave. A good cave meant shelter from rain, wind, and whatever had sharp teeth and liked the taste of humans. Lions, hyenas, saber-toothed cats. You name it. But it wasn't quiet. And it wasn't private. Imagine trying to sleep with 20 other people in a cramped space. Everyone's snoring. Someone's coughing. Someone else is mumbling in their sleep. And a baby is crying. There weren't pillows. Or sheets. Maybe some dried grass. Or animal skins if the hunt went well. But the real hero? Fire. Fire was everything. It gave warmth. It kept wild animals away. And it gave people a reason to huddle together. Scientists think early humans didn't sleep like we do now. Not in one long stretch. They slept in pieces. A nap here. A few hours there. Always someone staying awake, keeping watch. Shifting out who slept and who stayed up. A kind of sleep rotation. And it wasn't just for safety. It was social. Fire brought people together. Around the flames, people told stories. Shared food. Mumbled about their day. Firelight was the ancient version of TV. Calm, flickering, and kind of hypnotic. The glow helped people relax. Drift off. And when one person nodded off, someone else might wake up and throw another stick on the fire. Sleep was scattered. Communal. Messy. But it worked. Some researchers say humans might have evolved to be light sleepers on purpose. So we could hear a twig snap. Or a predator growl. Or a neighbor sneeze. Light sleep was survival. Dreams? Probably weird. Imagine dreaming about a bison you didn't catch. Or that time you dropped your only stone axe into the river. Oops. There's no written record, obviously. But we can guess from modern hunter-gatherer groups who still live a lot like our ancient ancestors. Groups like the Hadza in Tanzania. They don't all sleep at the same time. At any given moment, someone is awake. Even at 3 a.m., someone is poking the fire or walking around. It's like nature's version of night security. But without the uniform. This pattern has a name, sentinel sleeping. And it's not just human. Some birds and animals do it too. Taking turns sleeping and watching. It keeps everyone a little safer. And a little more tired, probably. But in a world full of danger, a little sleep is better than no sleep. And you didn't sleep in silence. Crickets. Wind. Animal calls. The sound of someone snoring next to you. Maybe even a thunderstorm rolling in. These were your lullabies. And if you were outside, under the stars, even colder. Even riskier. But maybe peaceful too. Because even thousands of years ago, humans looked up at the sky and wondered. And the stars looked back. Some scientists think humans might have slept more in the colder months. Less in the summer. Kind of like hibernation light. When it was dark and cold, you stayed close. You slept longer. You conserved energy. Food was harder to find. Days were shorter. So sleeping a lot wasn't lazy. It was smart. Back then, sleep wasn't just about rest. It was about staying alive. It wasn't cozy. But it was natural. Over time, sleep started to change. But in the beginning, it was raw. Primal. Just a bunch of tired humans. Trying not to freeze. Or get eaten. Or snore too loud. And somehow, that was enough. It was simple. Sleep when you could. Nap when it was safe. Wake when you had to. Not much has changed. Even now, when we hear a bump in the night, we open one eye. Just in case. Some instincts never fade. And so, deep in the past, in the orange glow of a flickering fire, humanity slept. Not deeply. Not perfectly. But just enough to make it to the next day. And then the next. Until one day, someone invented the blanket. Let's leave the caves behind. We're heading to ancient Egypt now. The land of gods, pyramids, and pretty hard beds. You'd think being a pharaoh meant luxury sleep. But no. Even kings slept like their necks didn't matter. Beds were stiff. Made of wood or stone. Maybe covered with a woven mat or linen. If you were rich, you might get something slightly softer. If you were a regular person, probably the floor. Or a straw mat, if you were lucky. Now, the pillow. You ready? It wasn't soft. It wasn't fluffy. It was a block. Literally a carved headrest, stone, wood, or ivory, to keep your neck up and your hair nice. Sort of like balancing your head on a bookend all night. Why? Because in Egypt, neat hair mattered. And also, people believed it helped keep spirits away. If your head touched the ground, something bad might sneak in. Neck protection equals ghost protection. Sleep had meaning. Deep meaning. Egyptians believed dreams were messages. From the gods. From the dead. From your inner self. If you had a dream about drowning, it could mean danger. If you dreamed of a cat, maybe something sacred. Or someone annoying. Interpretations varied. They had dream books, actual scrolls or texts that explained what dreams meant. Like ancient horoscopes, but dreamier. People even went to temples just to sleep. On purpose. Hoping to receive divine dreams. It was called dream incubation. You'd fast, cleanse, and then lie down in a holy room. Hoping the gods would stop by with some cosmic advice. Buy grain this week. Marry someone else. Don't trust the guy with the goat. Helpful stuff like that. Mesopotamia was similar. Big on dreams. Big on gods. They also believed dreams came from divine forces. Some gods sent visions to warn you. Or to test you. They even had dream interpreters, basically ancient therapists, but with fewer couches and more clay tablets. There are actual tablets from Babylon listing dream symbols. Stuff like, if you dream of fire, it means purification. Or danger. Or just that you saw fire that day. So yes, they wrote down their dreams. Even thousands of years ago, people were waking up and going, whoa, what was that? As for sleep setups in Mesopotamia, if you were rich, you had a proper bed. Carved wood, decorative legs, maybe some curtains. If you were poor, you had a mat on the floor. But in the summer, everyone went to the roof. Rooftop sleeping was a real thing. When it got hot, people carried their bedding upstairs and slept under the stars. Night breezes were better than baking inside a mud brick house. Of course, there were risks. Bugs. Thieves. The occasional falling goat. But still, cooler air. Sleep was about balance. Comfort versus survival. Faith versus practicality. Whether you were a scribe dreaming of numbers, or a laborer dreaming of rest. You woke up the next day, looked at the sun, and got back to work. Because in ancient times, sleep wasn't a luxury. It was a brief pause. A sacred little window. And then, life again. Let's take a detour from beds and blankets, and go cosmic. Because for ancient cultures, sleep wasn't just about closing your eyes. It was about entering another world. A world of symbols. Of spirits. Of gods. Let's start in ancient Greece. They had a whole god for sleep. His name? Hypnos. He lived in a dark cave, surrounded by poppies. No light. No sound. Just the hush of dreams. Right next to him, his twin brother, Thanatos, the god of death. Yep. Sleep and death were twins. That tells you something about how people saw sleep. Not just rest. Not just recharging. But something deeper. Mysterious. Almost dangerous. In Greek stories, Hypnos could make gods and men fall asleep. Even Zeus. He'd float over you on silent wings, sprinkle sleep like mist, and boom, you were out cold. His son, Morpheus, handled the dreams. Morphing into shapes, appearing in visions. Giving messages from beyond. Sleep wasn't random. It was divine. In India, you've got Vishnu. Vishnu didn't just sleep. He floated. On a cosmic serpent. Across the endless ocean of time. Eyes closed. Dreaming the universe into being. That's right, in Hindu mythology, reality itself is Vishnu's dream. He sleeps, we exist. He wakes, everything ends. He blinks, new cycle. Sleep wasn't a break from life. It was life. It was creation. Destruction. Rebirth. A full cosmic reset. And in Egypt, sleep was a way to meet the gods. Dreams weren't nonsense. They were sacred texts. You could get advice. Warnings. Or even visit the underworld, just a little preview. The idea that sleep connects you to the divine shows up everywhere. In China, Taoists believed sleep allowed your spirit to wander. To visit heavenly places. Or check in on your ancestors. In Africa, many tribes believed dreams were how the dead spoke to the living. Quiet visits from the other side. Gentle guidance. Or, not so gentle. Some Native American tribes saw dreams as spirit journeys. You'd go on quests. Gain wisdom. Talk to animals. And in all these places, sleep was tied to mystery. People noticed that when we sleep, we kind of leave. Our body stays. But something else drifts off. And then it comes back. Every night. Like magic. So cultures started using sleep as a metaphor. Sleep as death. Waking as rebirth. Sleep as forgetting. Sleep as knowing. Even language picked it up. Think about the phrases. Rest in peace. Eternal slumber. A rude awakening. It came to me in a dream. We still treat sleep like a sacred space. A place where truth can sneak in. Even today, people wake up from dreams and say, that meant something. We feel it. Because deep down, we still carry that old belief. That maybe sleep isn't just chemicals and brainwaves. Maybe it's a doorway. To something quieter. Older. And very, very wise. Let's move into the classical world, ancient Greece and Rome. More philosophy. More architecture. Slightly better beds. Now, they still didn't have memory foam. But compared to earlier times, these folks were living the dream. Sort of. Let's start with the Greeks. They thought about everything. Including sleep. In fact, they had opinions on how to do it properly. Philosophers like Aristotle wrote about the importance of rest. He believed sleep helped the body recover and kept the mind sharp. But also, Greeks worried a lot about insomnia. They blamed bad sleep on digestion, hot weather, even your mood. The advice? Eat light. Avoid naps. And don't sleep on your back. Apparently, demons liked that position. No thanks. Greek beds, or clines, were made of wood or bronze. They were slanted, so you didn't lie completely flat. They used pillows, finally, but still firm. And the mattress? Stuffed with straw. Or wool. Maybe feathers, if you were fancy. Blankets were woven wool. No duvets. No satin sheets. Just heavy and warm. And no bedrooms like we think of today. Sleep often happened in shared rooms, or even dining areas. A cline could be used for lounging during meals, then sleeping later. Dual purpose. Efficiency, ancient style. Now let's visit Rome. Romans loved sleep. But they also loved routine. The wealthier Romans had dedicated sleep chambers, called cubicula. Small, quiet rooms off to the side. No windows. Just stone walls and a door. Privacy? Sort of. Unless you had loud neighbors. Beds were wooden frames with ropes crisscrossed for support. On top, mattresses stuffed with straw, hay, or goat hair. The goat hair was for firmness. And probably smell. Servants fluffed pillows. Adjusted blankets. Kept oil lamps lit just enough to not trip over the dog. The Romans also invented the nap. They called it meridiatio, a midday rest. Usually after lunch. Think siesta, but with togas. They thought a short nap helped digestion and mood. Smart. And if you were really rich? You had sleeping clothes. Tunics made just for nighttime. Loose, breezy, and comfy. No pajamas with ducks on them, though. Missed opportunity. For the average Roman, though, sleep was still tied to light. You went to bed when it was dark. You woke up with the sun. Candles and oil lamps gave you a little evening time, but not much. And again, dreams mattered. Romans believed dreams could predict the future. That the gods whispered through visions. Temples had dream interpreters. You could even write down your dreams and ask a priest what it meant. Sleep wasn't just downtime. It was a spiritual hotline. Also, weird fact, Romans sometimes slept with one sandal on. In case they had to get up and go outside quickly. Just one. Half ready. They also had first sleep and second sleep, that old pattern where people woke up in the middle of the night. Maybe stretched. Talked. Ate something. Then went back to bed. No one freaked out about it. It was normal. And in the countryside, people slept with animals. Not just pets. chickens, goats, sometimes even the occasional ox. Heat is heat. So even in the classical world, sleep was a mix. You had philosophy and goat hair, chamber rooms and communal noise, dream science and midnight snacks. It wasn't luxurious, but it worked. And the goats didn't seem to mind. Let's step into the Middle Ages. Cold castles, flickering candles, thick wool blankets, and a whole new way to sleep. Because in medieval Europe, people didn't sleep all at once. They did it in two chunks. It was called segmented sleep, or biphasic sleep. But back then, it was just normal. You had your first sleep, then a break in the middle of the night, and then your second sleep. This wasn't a nap. This was the full night routine. People went to bed not long after sunset. Maybe around 8 or 9 p.m. They'd sleep for a few hours. Then wake up. Around midnight. Or 1 a.m. Or 2. It varied. Then they'd stay awake. For about an hour. Sometimes more. Then back to bed until morning. That gap in the middle. It wasn't weird. It wasn't even quiet. It was a whole thing. Some people used the time to pray. Especially monks. Monasteries had a very strict schedule. Monks would rise for midnight prayers, called matins, every single night. No snooze button. Just get up, chant in the dark, then go back to bed. But it wasn't just monks. Regular folks used the break for all kinds of things. Some got up and tended to animals. Or stoked the fire. Or checked on their kids. Some wrote in journals. Read, if they could. Or sat quietly. Others, well, they used it for intimacy. And yes, medieval texts actually recommended that time between sleeps for it. Apparently, it was good for your health. Very chill advice. And some people just sat and thought. Let their minds wander. Reflected on their dreams. Because dreams were still considered important. That quiet hour. It was like bonus thinking time. You couldn't scroll your phone. But you could stare into the dark and wonder what that dream about the talking goat meant. People didn't stress about waking up in the night. It was expected. Doctors even advised it. Medical texts talked about the watch, that period between sleeps. They said it was healthy. A natural part of the body's rhythm. It wasn't until much later that 8 straight hours became the gold standard. In medieval villages, houses were crowded. People often shared beds. Whole families, sometimes. Or travelers. Or even neighbors during storms. So when someone got up, others often stirred too. Maybe they chatted. Maybe they shifted positions. Maybe they grumbled. Beds were made of wood frames, with ropes or boards underneath. On top, a straw mattress. Heavy wool blankets. A pillow, if you were lucky. Feather beds existed, but they were expensive. So most people slept on straw. Which got lumpy. Fast. And no heaters. Just body heat and maybe a dog. Or 3. Winter was rough. You might sleep in your clothes. Or under every blanket you owned. And there weren't alarm clocks. Roosters, bells, or the cold morning light told you it was time to rise. Wealthier folks had bed curtains to block drafts. Some even had warming pans, metal trays filled with hot coals to heat the sheets. But for most, it was just cold toes and an early bedtime. Lighting was limited. Candles were precious. So people went to bed early to save fuel. Sleep became the natural response to darkness. And yet, the night wasn't silent. There were sounds. Wolves howling. Owls. The creaking of wood beams. Maybe footsteps outside. Or the wind slipping through a crack in the wall. People were used to it. That middle hour. It gave them space. Time to think. Or whisper. Or snack. Yes, midnight snacks were a thing. A bit of bread. A sip of ale. A piece of cheese. Not a feast. Just enough to feel human. Some would pray. Light a little candle. Maybe kneel beside the bed. Others would check the door. Or talk to the neighbor they were sharing the mattress with. Then, eventually, they'd get drowsy again. Climb back under the blankets. And slip into second sleep. Second sleep was usually deeper. Filled with longer dreams. It lasted until dawn. Or until the rooster got too loud. This cycle lasted for centuries. Segmented sleep was just how people lived. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that things changed. Street lights. Shift work. Clocks ticking. Suddenly, people expected to sleep in one straight line. But back then, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't insomnia. It was just night. So if you ever find yourself wide awake at 2 a.m., no panic. You're just sleeping medieval style. Grab a quiet thought. Maybe a piece of cheese. And drift back into second sleep. Let's head inside a medieval castle. Big stone walls. Echoes. Drafts. And a whole lot of people sleeping in one room. Sleeping in a castle wasn't glamorous. Not really. It was cold. Loud. And crowded. Even if you were a noble. Sure, you had a bed. Maybe a big one. Maybe with carved posts and fancy curtains. But you weren't sleeping alone. Nobles often shared their beds with servants. Or their kids. Or both. Sometimes even a guest or two, if space was tight. Privacy? Not a thing. It was normal for multiple people to sleep in the same bed. Not just for warmth, though that helped, but because that's how things were done. And the room? Never quiet. People talking. Babies crying. Dogs barking. Someone sneezing. Wood creaking. Fire crackling. And that's if you were lucky enough to have a fire. Castles were drafty. Windows weren't sealed. Cold air slipped in through every crack. That's why they had bed curtains. Not for looks, for warmth. Heavy fabric that hung from the posts and wrapped around the bed like a tent. It helped trap heat. Block out some of the noise. Not all, but some. You might sleep in your clothes. Or under layers of wool blankets. Socks on. Hat on. Maybe even gloves. And you didn't get up to use the bathroom. You used a chamber pot. Right there in the room. A ceramic bowl you kept under the bed. Or beside it. You'd use it, cover it, and deal with it in the morning. Or someone else would. Let's talk about mattresses. They were sacks stuffed with straw. Or feathers, if you were rich. But straw was more common. And it got flat. Fast. Some people had to fluff or beat their beds before sleeping. Just to get the lumps out. Sheets were linen. Changed occasionally. Washed even less. And pillows? Usually firm. Sometimes filled with grain husks or wool. Now, about lice. They were everywhere. Even the fancy folks had them. In their beds. In their wigs. In their clothes. People combed them out. Boiled their sheets. Burned herbs. But lice were part of life. So was snoring. And coughing. And the occasional sleepwalking servant. If you were royalty, you might have a private room. A solar. But even that wasn't truly private. Guards, ladies-in-waiting, pages, someone was always nearby. Some kings liked company while they slept. Not for conversation, just to have someone there. Maybe for comfort. Maybe for safety. The idea of a big, soft, silent bed for one. That's modern. In castles, sleep was a shared experience. A noisy, itchy, bundled-up event. And still, people managed. They had routines. Servants would warm the bed with hot stones or pans filled with coals. They'd tuck in the blankets. Draw the curtains. Maybe leave a candle burning low. People might pray before bed. Say a few words. Or just collapse from exhaustion. Because castle life wasn't easy. Even if you wore silk. There were responsibilities. Formal dinners. Letters to write. Laws to remember. And rugs to trip on in the dark. And once you were asleep, you hoped to stay that way. But maybe the baby cried. Or the dog barked. Or the fire needed stoking. Or someone knocked on your door at midnight with news. It happened. Sleep was valuable. And fragile. And not always peaceful. Even in a castle. So if your blanket falls off at night, or your neighbor's music keeps you up, just remember, at least you're not sharing a straw mattress with 2 kids, a footman, and a goat. Progress. Let's talk about nightmares. The ones that make you wake up in a cold sweat. Or feel like something was sitting on your chest. Yeah. Those. Back in the day, people had names for those feelings. They called them demons. And they believed they were real. Let's go medieval again. A time when people didn't have science to explain things. So they turned to stories. Beliefs. Supernatural ideas. If you woke up frozen, unable to move, with a heavy weight pressing down on you, that was sleep paralysis. But they didn't call it that. They blamed it on a demon. Sometimes it was a succubus, a female spirit that visited men in their sleep. Other times it was an incubus, the male version. Same vibe. Different name. People said these beings sat on your chest. Stole your breath. Gave you terrifying dreams. Or worse. They showed up in art. In old books. Creeping around dark bedrooms. Watching. Waiting. Pressing down. Nightmares weren't just bad dreams. They were visitations. And it wasn't just Europe. In Scandinavia, they talked about the Thmare. A creature that slipped into your room at night. Sat on you. Gave you horrible dreams. That's actually where the word nightmare comes from. Night. Mare. Boom. History. In Japan, there's a spirit called the kanashibari. It paralyzes you in your sleep. Same thing, heavy feeling, can't move, total terror. In parts of Africa, They talk about spirits called the devil on your back. Same sensation. Same fear. Everywhere you look, people try to explain that scary moment between sleep and waking. And they usually blamed it on something dark. Night terrors were seen as punishments. Or warnings. Or signs of possession. If you screamed in your sleep, or thrashed around, people thought maybe you'd done something wrong. Or maybe a demon was teaching you a lesson. Sleep wasn't always peaceful. People burned herbs. Hung charms. Whispered prayers. All to keep the bad dreams away. Some put knives under their pillows. Not to use, just to ward off evil. Iron was believed to keep spirits away. Others wrote protection spells and stuck them to the walls. And if you lived in a village with a priest or healer, they might come by and bless the room. Sprinkle holy water. Say words to keep the darkness out. It was serious. Because sleep was vulnerable. You weren't awake. You couldn't fight back. And if something came in the night, real or imagined, you had no defense. So people prepared. Just in case. Dreams were tricky, too. If you dreamed of fire, that might mean something bad. If you dreamed of animals, or death, or blood, definitely a warning. Whole books were written on dream interpretation. Not fun little quizzes. Heavy, serious stuff. In some cases, dreams were believed to be sent by spirits. Or ancestors. Or the devil himself. You had to be careful who you told. If your dreams sounded too strange, people might think something was wrong with you. Maybe you were cursed. Maybe possessed. Or maybe just unlucky. Kids were especially vulnerable. If a child had night terrors, people often blamed witches. Or fairies. They said the child had been taken in the night. Replaced with a changeling. A spirit in disguise. To fix it, more herbs. More prayers. More whispered words in the dark. Sleep was full of rituals. Some families lit a candle before bed. Others left milk out for spirits. Or tied knots in cloth to trap bad dreams. It wasn't about comfort. It was about protection. Because when you closed your eyes, anything could happen. And when you woke up shaken and sweating, you didn't ask what your brain was doing. You asked, what visited me? Today, we call it stress. Or a weird dinner. Or the brain doing its thing. But for most of history, dreams were not just dreams. They were doors. To other places. Other forces. Not all of them kind. So if you've ever had a nightmare and thought, that felt real, you're not alone. Thousands of years ago, someone else sat up in their straw bed. Breathing hard. Sweating. Heart racing. And they wondered, too. Was it just a dream? Or did something pay them a visit? And they probably got up. Lit a candle. Checked under the bed. And hoped, really hoped, they'd make it to morning. Let's go east now. To the lands of carpets, domes, and deep sleep wisdom. The Ottoman Empire. Big palaces. Flowing fabrics. And people who really knew how to take a nap. Because over here, rest wasn't just something you did at night. It was built into the day. Let's start with the siesta. Okay, the word is Spanish. But the idea? Global. In hot climates, the middle of the day was for slowing down. The sun was too strong. The work was too much. So people paused. They found shade. Drank tea. Maybe dozed off for a while. In the Ottoman world, napping was normal. Not lazy. Just practical. People rested after lunch. On cushions. On mats. In the corner of a shop. Or under a tree. Short naps. Deep naps. Whatever worked. It wasn't unusual to see a merchant snoozing behind a stall. Or a scribe with his head on the desk. Even officials. Even poets. Everyone paused. And it wasn't just about the heat. It was about rhythm. You worked in the morning. Took a break. Then worked again in the evening, when it was cooler. Simple. Smart. Sleepy. Now let's talk tea. Tea wasn't just a drink. It was a ritual. You didn't chug it. You sipped it. Slowly. Usually with others. And tea often came with rest. You sat. You drank. You breathed. And sometimes, you nodded off. Just a little. Not full sleep. Just the soft kind. The kind where your eyes close, but your brain stays floating. This was normal. Even expected. Hospitality was sacred. So was calm. And the homes? Made for comfort. Ottoman homes had low seating. Cushions everywhere. Carpets that felt like clouds. Curtains to block the sun. Rooms arranged around courtyards where breezes passed through. You didn't need a bedroom to rest. You just needed a quiet corner. And then there were the hammocks. In some parts of the empire, especially the southern regions, people used hammocks or hanging cloth beds. Cool air underneath. Gentle sway. Pretty ideal. Kids used them. Adults too. They were portable, simple, and surprisingly good for sleep. And at night? People often slept in shared spaces. One big room. Several family members. A few mats. Blankets. Maybe a lantern glowing faintly in the corner. If you were rich, you had more privacy. A decorated chamber. Perfumed air. Silk sheets. But even then, the goal was the same, rest. And sleep came with rituals. Washing. Prayer. Light food. Clean clothes. The Prophet Muhammad spoke about sleep. Encouraged people to lie on their right side. To say a short prayer. To shake out the bed, just in case. In Islamic tradition, sleep had guidelines. Don't sleep too much. Don't sleep through prayers. Don't sleep after dawn if you can help it. But also, don't overwork. Don't exhaust yourself. Balance mattered. In Persian culture, poets wrote about sleep like it was a soft, drifting love. Verses about slumber. Dreams. Night breezes. Moonlight on the skin. It wasn't just science. It was soul. People burned herbs. Used scented oils. Made the room quiet. Not silent, just soft. There was beauty in bedtime. And wisdom too. Because these cultures understood something simple. You can't rush sleep. You can't force peace. So you build it. Slowly. With rhythm. With habits. With hammocks and tea. And even in busy cities like Istanbul or Cairo, people knew how to pause. Not forever. Just long enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to think. Enough to dream. And maybe nap a little before dinner. Because rest wasn't weakness. It was part of the day. So next time you catch yourself drifting off after lunch, Go with it. You're just napping like an ottoman. So far, sleep's been flexible. It came in chunks. It came with prayers. It came after lunch. But now, things change. We're in the 1800s. Factories are rising. Streets are loud. Everything's speeding up. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution. And with it, the end of sleepy traditions. Before this, people slept when it got dark. Woke up when the sun came back. Maybe had segmented sleep. Maybe napped. It worked. But now, the clock is in charge. Factories don't care about circadian rhythms. They care about production. And that meant schedules. Shifts. Buzzers. Deadlines. People had to wake up early. Work long hours. Get home late. Eat fast. Sleep fast. Repeat. And just like that, segmented sleep faded. Who had time for 2 sleeps? Workers were exhausted. They wanted one solid chunk of sleep. As much as they could get. So the idea of 8 straight hours became the new goal. It didn't happen overnight. But over decades, sleep started shifting. Doctors, newspapers, even sleep manuals began saying, 8 hours is healthy. 8 hours is ideal. And just like that, the standard was born. Sleep wasn't sacred anymore. It was practical. You weren't connecting with dreams. You were recovering for your next shift. Let's talk light. Candles had always been around. But they were expensive. So people used them carefully. Then came gas lamps. Then electric bulbs. Suddenly, night wasn't dark anymore. Shops stayed open later. People read more at night. Streets glowed. Homes glowed. And people stayed up. Which sounds great. Except for sleep. Artificial light messes with your body's natural clock. Your brain sees light and thinks, oh, it's daytime. Let's stay up. But it's midnight. And your alarm is at 6. Oops. Sleep hours got squeezed. People went to bed later. But still had to wake up early. Sleep debt became a thing. And don't forget the night shift. Factories didn't close at sunset. They ran 24 hours. Which meant someone always had to be working. Night shifts were born. And with them, a whole new sleep problem. Because sleeping during the day? Not easy. It's bright. It's loud. It confuses your brain. Workers struggled. They got less rest. More stress. Worse health. But the machines kept running. In cities, it got worse. Noise. Light. Crowds. Trains. Horns. Factories. People slept in cramped rooms. Sometimes multiple families in one space. Quiet nights. Gone. And yet, the world didn't stop. Inventions kept coming. Clocks on walls. Alarm clocks by beds. Timetables. School bells. Life became structured. And sleep became scheduled. 8 hours a night. Or else. The idea stuck. Even today, we still chase it. But here's the thing, the 8-hour model. It's not ancient wisdom. It's industrial efficiency. A system that started with factories and stayed in our culture. And it doesn't work for everyone. Some people sleep better in chunks. Some need naps. Some are night owls. Some aren't. But the world doesn't bend for that. It still runs on the old model. Wake up. Work. Sleep. Repeat. And we've built our lives around it. Schools. Jobs. Alarms. Even coffee. All because, in the 1800s, someone wanted more cloth woven. More steel forged. More coal mined. And we've been adjusting our sleep ever since. So next time you feel guilty for not getting 8 perfect hours, remember, that rule didn't come from nature. It came from the factory floor. And honestly, factories don't dream. Let's open a creaky door and step into a Victorian bedroom. It's quiet. Dim, smells faintly of lavender and soap. There's probably a doily somewhere. And bedtime? It's a whole routine. The Victorians took sleep seriously. But also kind of dramatically. It started with winding down. People drank warm milk. They believed it helped you fall asleep. Calmed the nerves. Settled the stomach. Some added nutmeg. Others swore by honey. Then came the bath. Not always a full soak. Sometimes just washing the face, feet, and hands. Enough to feel clean, but not cold. Bathrooms weren't common, so the water came in pitchers and bowls. Towels were stiff. Soap smelled floral. The whole thing was slow and careful. Next, reading. Victorians loved bedtime reading. Not thrillers. Not adventure stories. More like moral tales. Religious reflections. Quiet poetry. Something to ease the mind. Something soft. And the furniture helped too. Enter, the fainting couch. It wasn't just for drama. It was for lounging. Resting before bed. Or resting instead of bed. People used them to nap, to cool off, or to gently collapse after a corset removal. They were everywhere. Once in bed, things got even more particular. Beds were tall. Carved. Stiff. Lots of layers. Mattress, sheets, blankets, coverlets, maybe a quilt. Plus a bed skirt, pillow shams, and probably a decorative throw that had no purpose. It took 5 minutes just to find the actual bed part. And sleep positions? Big topic. Victorians believed some positions were better than others. Sleeping on your back. Dangerous. Some thought it increased the chance of nightmares. Or even death. Supposedly, the tongue could fall back and block your airway. Scary stuff. So side sleeping was encouraged. Especially the right side. Doctors wrote about it. Mothers reminded children. Books gave diagrams. Sleep posture was serious business. Also, air mattered. Windows were sometimes left open, even in winter, to keep fresh air flowing. People thought stale air caused illness. So a little cold breeze was the price for good health. Some even believed you should sleep with your head pointing north. For energy balance. Or magnetism. Or something science-ish. And then, of course, there were the superstitions. Mirrors were covered at night. Why? Because it was thought that your soul might wander while you slept. And if it saw itself in a mirror, it could get confused. Or trapped. Creepy, but common. People also kept photos turned down. Clocks covered. Curtains drawn just so. It was all part of the vibe. Victorians didn't just fall into bed. They transitioned. Step by step. Action by action. Slowing things down. Quieting the mind. Settling the body. And they didn't all sleep alone. Large families often shared beds. Siblings, cousins, visitors, there was a lot of togetherness. But if you were wealthy, you had space. Your own room. Maybe even a dressing room. Or a bell to call a servant if the fire got low. And dreams? Still mysterious. Still meaningful. People kept dream journals. Or asked their doctor what a dream meant. Or blamed it on the milk. So yes, the Victorians were a little dramatic. A little rigid. A little lace-obsessed. But they cared about sleep. They wrapped it in rituals. Surrounded it with structure. They didn't scroll. Didn't binge-watch. Didn't send one last email. They just got ready. So next time you're rushing to bed in 5 minutes, maybe pause. Drink something warm. Read something slow. Cover the mirror. Just in case. Let's leave the soft blankets behind. Because now, we're in the trenches. World War I, World War II. Loud. Wet. Cold. And very, very tired. Soldiers didn't sleep in beds. They didn't have bedtime routines. No candles. No warm milk. No fluffy pillows. They slept when they could. Where they could. Sometimes in mud. Sometimes sitting up. Sometimes not at all. Let's start with World War I. Trench warfare. Long lines of dirt. Constant shelling. Rats. Rain. And fear. Soldiers stood guard. Took shifts. Slept in short bursts, maybe an hour or two at a time. They used whatever they had. A coat for a blanket. A helmet for a pillow. A muddy wall for support. Sleep wasn't restful. It was survival. And noise? Always. Guns firing. Men shouting. Whistles blowing. No quiet nights. They tried to nap during the day. When the fighting slowed. But even then, you could be woken up fast. Sleep came in fragments. Chunks. If at all. And then came World War II. Different battlefield. Same exhaustion. Soldiers traveled more. Moved faster. Slept less. They slept in foxholes. On trucks. Against trees. On ships. Wherever they could. Again, short bursts. Interrupted sleep. No real schedule. And yet, they functioned. Mostly. But it took a toll. Sleep deprivation started to be studied. The military wanted to know, how long can someone stay awake? How little sleep is too little? They did experiments. Some in labs. Some in the field. Results weren't pretty. Lack of sleep led to confusion. Slower reaction times. Bad decisions. Emotional outbursts. Sometimes even hallucinations. But war didn't wait. So they got creative. The army taught combat napping. Quick naps, 10 to 30 minutes, to refresh the brain. Better than nothing. They also used caffeine. Gum. Tablets. Strong coffee. Lots of it. Anything to keep the eyes open. Some planes were built with bunk spaces. Pilots took turns resting. Submarines had rotating bunks, one bed for multiple people, used in shifts. Hot, cramped, but it worked. And sometimes, sleep was a weapon. During air raids, cities had blackout rules. People couldn't use lights at night. Hard to sleep in the dark when your city might get bombed. People slept in basements. In shelters. Fully dressed. Ready to run. And still, they tried. They used earplugs. Rags over the eyes. Talked to each other to stay calm. Sleep was fragile. But they fought for it. And when soldiers came home, many struggled to sleep again. Too quiet. Too soft. Too still. Their bodies had learned to sleep in chaos. Now peace felt weird. Some kept sleeping in short bursts. Some had nightmares. Some couldn't sleep at all. And slowly, doctors started paying more attention. They began to understand trauma. Sleep disorders. PTSD. Sleep wasn't just rest anymore. It was part of healing. Military sleep science grew. New studies. New tools. Things like polyphasic sleep, multiple short sleep periods through the day. Used in survival training. Long missions. Space travel. Some special forces used microsleeps, just seconds of unconsciousness while sitting or standing. The brain grabs what it can. Still used today. Even the phrase, catch some Z's, comes from the military era. A way to say, rest fast, rest smart. War didn't kill sleep. But it changed it. It pushed the limits. And it taught us something simple. Sleep matters. Even when the world is loud. Even when time is short. Because without it, the body breaks. The mind slips. And decisions suffer. So the next time you're annoyed about a noisy neighbor or a snoring dog, remember someone once fell asleep in a trench, with boots on, under fire. Because they had to. And they dreamed anyway. Let's talk about babies. Tiny, wiggly, noisy bundles. And their sleep. Today, people say, sleep like a baby. But that didn't always mean peaceful. Because babies have always been complicated. And sleep? Even more so. Let's go back. In ancient times, babies slept close to their parents. Like, right next to them. Co-sleeping was normal. Not a trend. Just survival. There were no baby monitors. No glow-in-the-dark pacifiers. Just a mom, a dad, and a baby tucked in somewhere in the middle. The goal was simple, keep the baby warm, fed, and alive. Cradles existed. Simple wooden ones. Sometimes carved. Sometimes plain. They rocked. They creaked. Some were tied to ropes from the ceiling so they could swing gently. But even with cradles, babies often ended up in bed with parents. Especially at night. Feeding was easier. Soothing was faster. And again, warmth mattered. Rooms were cold. Blankets were limited. Sometimes older siblings helped. Rocked the cradle. Sang lullabies. Lullabies have been around forever. Soft songs. Repetitive. Calming. Sometimes weird. Some were gentle. Others warned about wolves, witches, or bad dreams. But the rhythm worked. Babies heard the voice. Felt the sway. drifted off. In many cultures, lullabies weren't just for sleep. They were for bonding, teaching, comfort. Even now, scientists say lullabies can slow heart rates, calm the brain, help sleep. But back then, it was instinct. You sing. You rock. You hope for 5 minutes of peace. Let's jump ahead. In medieval and early modern Europe, babies still slept near their parents. Beds were shared. Rooms were tight. Co-sleeping was the only option. But not everyone agreed. Some doctors started saying babies needed their own space. By the 1700s and 1800s, in wealthier families, nurseries became a thing. Separate rooms. Cribs. Nannies. The idea was to make babies more independent. Or more obedient. Or just quieter. Sometimes they were left to cry it out. Literally. But that didn't work for everyone. Poorer families didn't have extra rooms. They shared everything. Babies stayed close. In some places, people swaddled babies tight, like tiny burritos, to keep them from moving too much. It kept them warm. And still. Some were swaddled for months. Day and night. Later, this changed. Swaddling faded. Sleepwear became looser. Blankets got better. And then came the rules. In the 1900s, parenting books exploded. Suddenly, there were guides for everything. How to feed. When to nap. Which direction the crib should face. Some said babies should sleep alone. Some said they needed cuddles. Some said strict schedules. Others said go with the flow. It got confusing. And it still is. Modern parents argue over sleep training. Co-sleeping. Crib safety. White noise. Weighted sleep sacks. But long ago, it was simpler. Not easier. Just simpler. You kept the baby close. You sang a song. You rocked the cradle. You hoped. You hoped they'd sleep. You hoped they'd stay asleep. And when they didn't, you sighed. Rolled over. And tried again. Some cultures still co-sleep as a norm. In Japan, families often sleep in the same room. Floor mats. Shared spaces. It's not strange. It's life. In parts of Africa, babies stay tied to their mothers' backs during the day. Then cuddle close at night. In Nordic countries, babies nap outside in strollers, even in winter. Wrapped up warm. Breathing fresh air. Sleep looks different everywhere. But the need? Always the same. Rest. Warmth. Safety. And for babies, routine helps. Even ancient families had bedtime rituals. A washcloth. A lullaby. A slow sway. And yes, some quiet desperation. Because sleep, especially baby sleep, isn't about perfection. It's about trying. Trying to make the night just a little easier. And in the morning, trying again. So, sleeping like a baby? It's not about silence. It's about being held. Feeling safe. Feeling close. And sometimes, snoring softly in someone's arms. Which honestly, doesn't sound too bad. We've talked a lot about dreams. What they meant. What people thought they meant. But now it's time to get scientific. Let's go to the late 1800s and early 1900s. That's when dreams stopped being just mysterious stories, and started being studied. Enter psychology. And one man in particular, Sigmund Freud. Freud was an Austrian doctor. He asked a simple question. What if dreams mean something? He wrote a big book about it. The Interpretation of Dreams. In it, he said dreams weren't random. They were messages from the unconscious mind. According to Freud, your brain had stuff it didn't want to face. So it hid it in dreams. Strange symbols. Weird feelings. Bizarre situations. It wasn't about the dream itself. It was about what the dream stood for. Like, dreaming about falling. Maybe that meant insecurity. Dreaming about a train. Maybe that meant something else entirely. Freud had a lot of theories. Some were helpful. Some were, very Freud. But either way, people paid attention. Dreams weren't just nighttime noise. They were clues. And sleep. Sleep became a subject of study. Psychologists, doctors, researchers, they all got interested. They started watching people sleep. Not in a creepy way. In a lab. That's where the sleep lab was born. A quiet room. A bed. Some wires. A clipboard. Researchers observed brainwaves. Breathing. Eye movements. Heart rates. They recorded everything. And in the 1950s, something big happened. They discovered REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. It's the part of sleep where your eyes twitch under your lids. Your brain lights up. Your body goes still. And you dream the most vivid dreams. REM sleep was a game changer. Before that, people thought sleep was just one long rest. But now, they realized, sleep has stages. You cycle through them. Light sleep. Deep sleep. REM. Then repeat. Each stage does something different. One helps the body heal. One helps store memories. One helps with learning. And REM? That's when your brain cleans up, processes emotions, and goes wild with dreams. People learned that REM was important. If you skipped it, your brain got foggy. Your mood dipped. You felt off. So researchers started mapping the full sleep cycle. Turns out, one cycle is about 90 minutes. And most people go through 4 to 6 cycles per night. That's why sleep isn't just about how long you sleep, it's about the quality. And the balance of stages. This changed everything. Doctors began diagnosing sleep problems. Insomnia. Narcolepsy. Sleep apnea. They built better sleep labs. Used EEG machines to track brainwaves. Wrote books. Built treatments. And dreams? Still weird. Still meaningful. But now backed by brain scans. Some researchers tried decoding dreams. Others looked at dream frequency. Or how certain foods affected them. Some people even learned lucid dreaming, being aware that you're dreaming, and sometimes controlling it. It became part science, part mystery. But now, we knew more. We knew sleep wasn't just rest. It was repair. The brain didn't shut down. It worked in new ways. Sorting memories. Making connections. Dealing with stress. And when it didn't work right, you felt it. Today, sleep research is still growing. We use apps. Smart watches. Sleep trackers. They show how long you slept. How deep. When you hit REM. When you tossed and turned. It's cool. But also kind of stressful. Because now people worry about their sleep score. But here's the thing, even with all this science, sleep is still kind of magic. You lie down. You close your eyes. And you go somewhere else. Sometimes it's a dream. Sometimes it's just nothing. But your body resets. Thanks to Freud, we looked inward. Thanks to labs, we looked deeper. And thanks to REM, we realized sleep isn't boring. It's necessary. And strange. And sometimes beautiful. So if you dream of flying, or teeth falling out, or being chased by a goat, don't panic. It's just your brain, doing what it's done for centuries. Sorting. Rebuilding. Wandering. All while you lie there, very still. And very quiet. And that's science. We've covered caves, castles, and cradles. But now it's time to talk about the weirdest places people try to sleep. Let's start with space. Yes, outer space. Up there, in zero gravity, sleep gets strange. Astronauts don't have beds. They sleep in sleeping bags strapped to the wall. Or the ceiling. Or wherever. Because there's no down in space. They float. They drift. Their arms don't rest on anything. So they curl up like floating shrimp. There's no sunset. No sunrise. Just Earth spinning below. On the International Space Station, the sun rises and sets every 90 minutes. So astronauts have to fake bedtime. They follow a strict schedule. Use eye masks. Block out noise. Sometimes take sleep meds. Still, many say they sleep less in space. It's just weird. Now, let's go deep. Underwater. Submarines. Long missions. No windows. No sunlight. Just metal walls and artificial light. Crew members sleep in shifts. 6 hours on duty. 6 hours off. Over and over. It's called a rotating watch schedule. Some bunks are shared. One person sleeps while another works. They call it hot bunking. Not because it's cozy, but because the bed is still warm from the last person. Privacy. None. Sound. Constant. The hum of machines. The creak of metal. Footsteps in narrow halls. People sleep with earplugs. Masks. Sometimes music. Just to stay sane. Submariners often lose track of time. Their body clocks get confused. Same with people in polar stations. In Antarctica, during winter, it stays dark for months. No sunrise. No cues. Just darkness. 24/7. Researchers there have reported strange sleep cycles. Longer naps. More vivid dreams. Some even feel like they're in a dream while awake. On the flip side, during polar summer, it's always light. Hard to sleep when the sun never sets. People use blackout curtains. Heavy blinds. Eye covers. And still, sleep feels off. Now let's talk about polyphasic sleep. That's when people break sleep into multiple parts. Instead of 8 hours at night, they take naps throughout the day. Like 4 hours at night. Then 2 naps during the day. Some go even further. There's a schedule called the Huberman, 20-minute naps every 4 hours. That's it. People have tried it. Some say it works. Others crash after a few days. It's intense. But for some jobs, like solo sailing, or certain military ops, it's necessary. Because you can't be unconscious for long. So you train your body to grab rest in chunks. It's not easy. But it's real. Modern sleep science has tested a lot of this. People have slept in total darkness for weeks. Just to see what happens. Turns out, the body starts making its own rhythm. One person, in an underground bunker, started sleeping in 25-hour cycles. Like his brain made up a new day. Others tried constant light. The result? Poor sleep. Bad mood. Confused clocks. We're built for light and dark. When we lose that, sleep suffers. Some people, in isolation experiments, began dreaming more. Or had trouble knowing if they were awake. Sleep and reality got tangled. That's the thing, sleep isn't just about the body. It's about place. Where you sleep matters. In space. Underwater. In endless night. Under constant light. We adapt. But not perfectly. Astronauts come back exhausted. Submariners take time to adjust. People in strange places always say the same thing when they return. They just want their own bed. A soft surface. A quiet room. A dark window. A pillow. Nothing fancy. Just normal. So next time you can't fall asleep in your bed, remember. You could be in zero gravity. Floating in silence. Strapped to a wall. Or sharing a bunk with a guy named Dave. Instead, you've got your pillow. Your blanket. Your light switch. Not perfect. But not bad. And way better than hot bunking. So here we are. Modern day. Beds are softer. Pillows are fluffier. Blankets are electric. And still, we're tired. Because today, sleep is confusing. Let's start with the obvious. Phones. They go everywhere. Even to bed. We scroll. Tap. Check one more thing. Just 5 minutes. Then it's an hour later. Blue light from screens tells our brain it's still daytime. Melatonin, the hormone that helps us feel sleepy, gets delayed. So we stay up. And when we do try to sleep, the mind won't stop. Too much noise. Too much light. Too many tabs open, in our heads. Enter, the sleep industry. It's huge. There are sleep apps. Sleep trackers. Smart mattresses. Weighted blankets. White noise machines. Essential oils. People spend billions trying to rest. We've got melatonin gummies. Lavender sprays. Sleep teas. Eye masks. Meditation playlists. You can get a ring that tracks your sleep. A watch. A phone app. A bed that adjusts temperature. And yet, so many people still can't sleep. Insomnia is everywhere. Stress. Work. Noise. Light. Caffeine. Worry. It's not just a bad night here or there. It's chronic. Some try pills. Others try therapy. Some just power through. We have more knowledge than ever. And less rest. So what do? Some return to the basics. Dark room. Quiet space. No screens. Others go back to naps. Short naps. Long naps. Desk naps. Couch naps. Napping is back. Companies offer nap pods. Airports have nap lounges. Some cultures never stop napping. People try to nap like it's a skill. And then there's sound. White noise. Pink noise. Ocean sounds. Rain on a tent. We use machines to block out life. To mimic caves. Storms. Breezes. People even listen to history documentaries. Soft voices. Boring facts. Like this one. Because sometimes, boring helps. There are sleep coaches. Sleep consultants. Sleep influencers. People who tell you what pillow to buy. What time to go to bed. What bedtime routine works. It's a whole thing. But it's not new. We've always wanted to sleep well. We've always had rituals. Beliefs. Tools. It just looks different now. No more straw beds or firelight. But we've got smart alarms and blackout curtains. And still, the goal is the same. Rest. Letting go. Closing your eyes. Drifting off. Whether it's in a hammock, a pod, or under a weighted blanket, we want peace. Because when we sleep well, life is better. We think clearer. Feel better. Remember more. And when we don't, everything gets harder. So we keep trying. We stretch. We yawn. We read. We hope. And sometimes, we dream. Not just at night. But of sleeping better. And maybe someday, we'll get there. Maybe tonight. So turn off your screen. Fluff your pillow. And let's give it a try.